morning, good afternoon, good evening. The elections in Uganda are over. The results was not surprising. We all saw it coming. The elections were going to be rigged, and they were rigged. And this has become the norm. In Uganda, in Zimbabwe, Tanzania, Mozambique, and many, many other African countries. The failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections has become the norm. And the tragedy, of course, is that this is the root cause of why Africa is one of the least developed continents on earth. Why millions of Africans live in abject poverty. And funny enough, the continent has got everything we want. It's got all the minerals, great opportunities to prosper. And yet we found ourselves in this position again and again because we failed to govern ourselves. Let's just listen to an Al Jazeera documentary, a report on the Uganda elections.
Uganda has returned back to normal after a tense election marked by violence in some parts of the country and a disputed poll results. President Yoweri Museveni has accused the main opposition party, led by Bobi Wine, of trying to destabilize the country and cause chaos.
I asked the confused people to come back to sanity, because what they are planning, what they wanted to do, we already know, and we have already demobilized.
Wine, also known as Robert Chagulanyi, is in hiding after security forces raided his home last Friday. How are you? How's your family?
I'm alive. I don't know how my family is.
He spoke to Al Jazeera.
I would love to be in my home. I've not changed my clothes in days. I want to be home. I want to be free. I want to take care of my people. But the military and police have taken over my home. This is a crackdown to intimidate, to silence, and to completely, subdue the forces of change.
You have rejected the elections. You said that the election is rigged. What evidence do you have?
This time, not the police, not the military, but Electoral Commission officials took part in critiquing ballot papers in favor of General Museveni. Glad enough, we have record of them. We have videos of them doing that.
Do you want people to come out to the streets to protest?
We want the people of Uganda to take charge of this and find numerous creative ways. Could be protesting on the streets. Some of us started protesting by holding high the national flag.
Ben, what do you think?
Good day to you and good day to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. I've always said holding elections periodically does not mean a country is democratic. It is actually holding free, fair, and credible elections that a country is democratic. And we have seen that in Africa, most countries have failed to do that. And their election process has always been flawed, marked with violence and vote rigging schemes. This is why we are a failed continent when you look at it, globally. Without democracy, we are going nowhere, and we are going to be stuck in nowhere for a very, very long time. It bothers me when people say democracy is not for Africa. We are trying to copy a European or Western, culture. And then my question is, what are you copying when you are failing to copy? We have seen how other countries conduct their elections. We don't have to go even far. I always give an example of our neighbors, because we as Zimbabweans, our neighbors, South Africa, our neighbors, Botswana. You could tell what they were doing, and everybody was there concentrating on what the job was. And then you go Tanzania, you go Uganda, you go Zimbabwe. You can't make heads or tails of what really happens. From the beginning, leading up to the election itself, during the election, and after the election. That is not democracy. That is not free, fair, and credible elections. So we got the definition wrong, and we have stuck with it. And this is why we are in this mess. It's sad, we could fail such a very simple and easy concept. And we did not even have to start the concept ourselves. All we just had to do was copy the right thing. And we failed.
Yes, it is tragic. I think one has got to go back and saying, why is it so difficult to hold free, fair, and credible elections? The truth of the matter is, most of those people don't even know what free, fair, and credible elections are. And hence the reason why we are in this mess. It's not rocket science. Let's be honest about that. If you're going to hold elections, like any other situation, you've got to follow the rules. In this particular case, one of the basic rules is that let's be clear on who has the right to vote. In other words, the voters' roll. We should be able to verify that voters' roll. And those on the voters' roll should be free to vote for whoever they want. It's not as if it's rocket science. And yet, in Africa, it must be said, we failed to even comprehend that basic understanding. And hence the reason why we are caught up in this mess. Because if you understand, for instance, that you need a voter's roll, and the voter's roll should be verified, and that the people should be able to vote freely, which is what is at the heart of free, fair, and credible elections, then you've got the basics there. You would not go into an election when you know you don't have even those basics. That is what is making it so self-defeating. Why is it that some people would go into an election when they know they don't have a voters' roll. It has not been verified. When they know a significant proportion of the voters will not be able to cast their vote freely. And yet that is what we've been doing. And in the case of Zimbabwe, we go even one step further. Because in the case of Zimbabwe, we had the golden opportunity to implement those reforms to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. We have elected MDC-CCC leaders for the primary purpose of implementing democratic changes to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. They failed to do so. And since the GNU debacle, they are the ones who have been conning people to participate in a flawed process, which they knew was flawed, which they knew that if you participate, you perpetuate the ZANU-PF dictatorship. This is the tragedy of Africa. This is the tragedy of Zimbabwe.
It's difficult, Wilbert, because we have been told that, gentlemen, for you to have free, fair, and credible elections, these are the things that you need to fix from what you have right now. But for some reason, we have failed to listen to it, or we have chosen just to ignore. It's as if we are refusing help at each turn, and we have continued with the system that is there. I mean, going into an election with no verified voters roll, it's like you are going with no transcript. You're just simply just going through the motion and then complaining after. The question is, but you knew. Why didn't you do something about it then? You are crying the day after. Didn't you know this was what is going to happen? I mean, this has happened to countries like Zimbabwe, where there is no verified voters roll, where you find, the folk that passed away long time ago are still in that voters roll. And in Uganda's case, you find that people that died during the COVID times, their names were there. You look at the composition of their electoral commissions themselves, you find that they are none other than family members of the incumbent. It's so obvious, it's so obvious that the only logical step is to withdraw. Hold on a minute. This cannot be fair. This is not what the Constitution says. Then stand your ground. That way, at least you are at a point where you have an advantage because you've brought it out before you've done the deed. But for some reason, we want to participate in flawed elections. And the worst part is we call it our right. What right is there when the election itself is meaningless? It's a done deal. It's a closed deal. It bothers me how we can, we know the facts, but choose to ignore and cry the day after when nobody can help. It really does bother me.
Well, here is a video of somebody explaining some of the consequences of our failure to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections, of our failure to end this case of rigged elections and bad governance.
If you go to Zimbabwe today, you want to, when you see how black people in Zimbabwe are living. Number one, water as we speak in Zimbabwe is not reticulated. So you drink it at electricity from midnight to 5 o'clock in the morning. The whole day they have no electricity. It means that 90% of able-bodied men and women in Zimbabwe cannot find work. They pay for health services. But there are also not hospitals there. So the people who work in what you can call an economy in Zimbabwe, which has, by all indications, collapsed. So the tragedy.
I'm sorry about the quality of that video. Seem to have lost sound in some of its cases. But he was only saying what we already know. We have talked of some of the consequences of the 45 years of bad governance, being in the form of bad roads, people living still in this day and age in mud huts, and basic services like education and healthcare have all but collapsed. And he did mention the serious problem of unemployment. Up to 90% of Zimbabweans are unemployed. The country in 1980 had functioning companies, many companies, but many of them have since closed. And up to 76% of Zimbabweans are reportedly in the informal sector, etc., etc. So the issue of the failure to hold free, fair, and credible elections has serious consequences. And it is those consequences that people, after 45 years, should be able to sit back and say, wait a minute, this is not working. We should correct this. This is why we're asking here, can this mold ever be broken? Ben.
I don't think, we can find meaningful change as long as we keep this trajectory that we are heading. We are just simply just passing time as we wallow in our mud. I mean, like I said, it's not that we do not know what is going on, but we choose to ignore it at every turn. The facts are there. Historical facts are there. And history, what it teaches us is to make us better in the future. But in the case of Zimbabwe, look, we have been participating in rigged elections for the past 45 years, going on 46 now. And we are still expecting a different outcome. Now you're hearing words that, let us unite. And the question is, what are you uniting for? As long as you don't have a purpose of unity, it is meaningless. Let us unite and take ZANU-PF head on how? By participating in rigged elections. ZANU-PF does not need you to vote for them, especially when they have ZEC, that is their children that are running it. We've seen it in Uganda, that the evidence was there, them marking, the ballots way before. The people of Uganda knew this was going to happen, but they still went into it. So who then do you then cry to and say, look what they did? Who didn't know? The international community knew. This is why they told you, fix this. Zimbabwe's case. You go and you demonstrate at SADC. To do what? When they told you, it's not as if they did not know. Some people will say you were exposing. Exposing something that is already known. To what benefit is it? We know as we are going into the 2028 Zimbabwe election, ZANU-PF has already set in place mechanisms to rig the election. And lest I remind, nothing of the recommendations that we were given by SADC, EU, AU has been implemented. Nothing has changed. So we cannot expect a different result. Those elections will be rigged. No matter what unity and what, it will be rigged. The only logical step is to withdraw and demand for reforms now. So I say, if there are no reforms, there should be no election. Period. No negotiation. Otherwise, come 2028, the next day after election, we would be singing, I told you so.
My concluding remark is, question, can this mold be broken? This cycle of participating in flawed elections to give ZANU-PF legitimacy and perpetuate the dictatorship and the people suffering. Can it be broken? The answer is yes, of course it can be broken. It's not up to the leaders to break it because they are benefiting from it. This is why ZANU-PF will never reform itself out of office. That should be understood by everybody by now. What about MDC CCC? MDC CCC, like I said at the beginning, they were elected by the people and given the primary task of implementing democratic changes to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship. The party was launched in 1999, and they called themselves the Movement for Democratic Change. Up to now, ZANU-PF is still able to rig elections. which should have flagged, we should have set the bells ringing in everybody's mind. Why is it that 25 years after we had elected these opposition leaders, including the 5 years of the GNU when they did the best opportunity to implement the reforms, ZANU-PF is still able to rig the elections? The answer is there. The opposition MDC CCC leaders have been corrupted. Mugabe bribed them with the trappings of high office. And we have since learned that some of the top brass in the opposition got farms and many, many other benefits. And in reply, those opposition leaders have completely forgotten the reforms. There are some among us who still believe that we've got to believe in the opposition. This is the problem. They are the ones who are holding now the nation to ransom. Because the opposition are definitely benefiting from the status quo. They're not going to implement any reforms. If they fail to do so during the GNU, when they had the best opportunity to do so, it is naive to think they'll do so now. The solution is to accept that the opposition, the MDC CCC leaders, are now ZANU-PF Team B in all but name. And the fact that it has taken 25 years for that simple reality to dawn is regrettable. But it is even more tragic that there are some out there who still believe in the opposition. The biggest challenge, whether or not we can finally break the mold, will come in 2028. If Chamisa is going to con millions of Zimbabweans to participate in those elections, then the answer to that question is we have failed to break the mold. If we can manage to send the clear message to the millions of those who were conned in 2023, 2018, to participate in flawed elections because they believed Chamisa's idiotic lie that he had plugged the vote rigging loopholes, then we will have broken the mold. And I say to the people of Zimbabwe, it is in everyone's interest to break that mold. You don't need a political party to make sure that Chamisa does not con people to participate in flawed elections. That is the reality. Think about it. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.